And that's why it should be illegal to hunt horses in North America. Oh, hey there. As a young child, I remember riding into town with my parents and older sisters and going to Pee-wee's, which wasn't the name of a restaurant, but rather the nickname of the woman who worked there. My older sisters and I would run into the diner and hop up on the red pleather stools lining the counter. I'd wait my turn, and when Pee-wee came around, I'd proudly order a cheeseburger, at which point Pee-wee would reply with, "Do you want cheese on that?" I'd answer with a surprised but amused, "Yes, of course, it's a cheeseburger." Even at that young age, I knew the difference between a hamburger and a cheeseburger, so why didn't Pee-wee? To this day, I think about the etymology of these words. Cheeseburgers aren't made of cheese, but hamburgers are not made of ham either. And what exactly is a burger anyway? Well, today we're making sliders, a variation on the hamburger, while we take a journey on defining the terms and origins of hamburgers. I'm Chase W. Beck. I have a PhD in anthropology. Join me as we learn about the different ways food and culture intersect on Dr. Beck's Epicurean Delights. Making sliders only requires a few ingredients. First, you will need a pound of ground beef, 8 to 9 small rolls. I chose these sweet Hawaiian rolls. They're the perfect size for the amount of meat that you're going to be eating. 1 large onion, some cheese, and I chose a cheddar cheese here. You can also use American because it melts very well. And yellow mustard. It's important that you use yellow mustard here. A fancier mustard just will not be appropriate. Some ketchup. I have a very small amount of ketchup because that's all I had left over, but it was plenty for what I'm making here. And some dill pickles. Now, in previous episodes, I usually throw up a text showing the exact steps or illustrating the exact steps of making a dish, and I read through it while you wait. I think that for this one, I'm just going to do it, and you can watch and follow along. It's really the best way to describe or illustrate what's happening in this dish. I will include instructions in the description in the YouTube video, though. We want these onion slices to be very thin. Now, I could do this with a knife, but some people might not be able to accomplish that uniformity with a knife alone, and so that's where a mandolin slicer comes in. You want to use a plastic insert that's going to leave you with whole slices of onions when you're finished, and as always, use some hand protection so you don't slice your skin off your hand. And that's how you get nice even slices. Let's take a moment to enjoy them. Alright, so in order to make these sliders perfectly, you're going to want to weigh your meat. You want every single ball of meat to weigh the exact same amount so that all of the sliders are of uniform size. This also helps you get the proper meat to bun ratio. So you get your digital scale out here and you weigh them. Each one I want it to be about 2 ounces. Once all your meat is weighed out, it is time for cooking your beef patties. It's important that you get all of your ingredients around and ready to go before you begin cooking, because once the process starts, it goes very fast. I'm using this electric griddle here. It's sort of a panini press, but I'm going to be using it in its open format so that I have the maximum amount of griddle space for cooking these burgers. The buns that I have here are not pre-cut. They're just rolls, so I'm going to have to cut them myself. I have more than I need, but it's good to have a little bit extra just in case one falls on the floor and is lost. It might look like I'm taking an inordinate amount of time to get these buns perfectly positioned, but it becomes very important at the time when you're making the burgers that everything's laid out properly. You want everything just so that you can grab them quickly and put them on top of the cooking meat so that they have enough time to steam before the beef is overdone. Note the orientation where both pieces of bun are facing down. You can check the temperature or the readiness of your skillet with an infrared thermometer. You can also use your hand, or you could even use a little bit of water to see if it sizzles when it hits the cooking surface. And it looks like my skillet is just about ready. So the first thing that goes down is the mustard. You want a nice little squeeze, maybe just about a teaspoon, maybe a little bit more than a teaspoon in size for each burger patty. And I'm going to be placing the burger patties on in round pieces. You don't flatten them before you put them on the grill, because the next step after you get them on the grill is to smash them down. So I'm going to take my spatula here and apply a nice even pressure to get them nice and flat. And now that they're taking up more room on the skillet, I actually have less room for the densely packed balls of meat, and I have to start rearranging things. But they will shrink up as they cook. Nothing's lost here. So here I am placing the onions on top of the raw side of the beef, so that when I flip the beef over, the onions will be on the bottom. There are many different techniques to get the onions cooked and to construct sliders. Some people will cook the onions first on the griddle to brown them before adding them to the rest of the meat. Some of them will put the onions down and then put the raw beef on top, so that when the beef gets pressed, it sort of absorbs the onion. I think for this recipe that you're watching here, I could have cooked the onions a little bit longer and they might have developed more flavor, but hey, each time you do this, you can try your own little variation and see which one you enjoy the most. So this is the first real moment in the recipe where we get to pause as we wait for these burgers to cook on the first side. And that gives us maybe just enough time for a botany minute. Yellow mustard as a condiment is made from the yellow or white mustard plant, the scientific name of which is Sinapis alba. It has been cultivated as a condiment crop for millennia, and also is an ideal feedstock. Additionally, Sinapis alba contains the essential oil p-hydroxybenzyl isothiocyanate, a compound that has antimicrobial activity and is used as a food preservative. So this here is a critical step. We're going to be placing the buns on top of the burger patties, and this is why we had to get all of the ingredients assembled beforehand, because of the quick cooking time. You want to be able to get all the buns on top of the cheese, on top of the burger patties, on top of the onions, now that you've flipped everything over, so that the buns can steam underneath a clean cotton towel that I have right here. And we're just going to steam for a couple of minutes until the other side cooks. The steaming is essential for softening up the buns, and that's what makes a slider a slider. That's what separates a slider from every other small sandwich out there. A pork slider is just a tiny pork sandwich. A chicken slider is just a tiny chicken sandwich if they're not steaming the buns. That is an integral step to making a slider. After about 2 minutes, it's time for the great unveiling. See how our burgers are doing. The buns are soft and steamed, and it's time to take them off of the griddle. After I plate the sliders, I will be adding a squirt of ketchup and a couple of slices of dill pickles, and they'll be ready to eat. So while you watch me do that, how about I talk about the origins of the name hamburger? The name hamburger comes from the Hamburg steak, or the steak from Hamburg, Germany. However, minced cuts of meat, whether beef or another animal, do not originate with Hamburg, Germany, and were eaten both cooked and uncooked for millennia. In fact, we have a recipe for a chopped up patty of meat in one of the oldest surviving cookbooks we have today, Epicurean's De Re Coquinaria. The reason why these are called hamburgers today is because Germans have a habit of naming food after themselves, or after the villages or towns where they originated. Frankfurters come from Frankfurt, Wieners come from Vienna, and hamburgers come from Hamburg. There are, in fact, about as many stories about the origin of the hamburger as there are places serving them today. But perhaps the most interesting story belongs to Charlie Nagreen. The story goes that in 1885, at the age of 15, Charlie went to the fair in Seymour, Wisconsin to set up a food stand to sell meatballs. He found that people were unlikely to buy his meatballs as long as they couldn't walk around and enjoy the fair while eating them. So to solve this problem, he took his flattened beef meatballs and placed them between two slices of bread, and thus the hamburger was born. Charlie later became known as Hamburger Charlie, and Seymour, Wisconsin became known as the place where hamburgers originated.
And just like that, you have a meal fit for a Popeye character. I hope that you've seen that I've illustrated the difference between a slider and just a small sandwich. It involves steam, so use that next time. This looks wonderful, and now I'm going to dig in. I'll take this little guy on top. The cheese is nice and melted. No. And the bread is warm, the bun, because it sat on top of the burgers as they cooked. It's also absorbed some of that beef juice. It's fantastic. It's not the beefiest of burgers because the patty there is small, but because you used a small bun, it kind of balances everything out. It's really good. I think if I were to do this again though, I might cook the onions before I put them on top of the burger, just give them a little bit more time to brown and pick up some flavor. But you know, we could always revisit this. That might be another episode of Dr. Beck's Epicurean Delights. Now go make it yourself. See you later.